Chapter 14. The question he didn't ask, and the one I did. There was a stillness to that day. Not a quiet kind of still, not peaceful, more like the air was holding its breath. Adam came by in the afternoon. He had paint on his hands and sun in his eyes. He didn't kiss me, didn't touch me, but he watched me like he was on the edge of something he couldn't step down from. We sat in the garden. He fixed a hinge on the gate while I pulled weeds I'd already pulled twice this week. We were both fidgeting with things we could control. I caught him staring at me once, not in longing, not in fear, in question. The kind of look that says, I want to ask, but I'm afraid of your answer. Later, over tea, I asked him, is something wrong? He shook his head. No, He trailed off, stared at the rim of his mug. I had a thought today, he said finally, that this, you and me, might be something. Not just now, but later. My breath caught. I thought that, I said. More than once. His eyes met mine, but I didn't want to rush it. I didn't want to ask you for more before you were ready. Silence stretched out between us. Not uncomfortable, just real. So I broke it. I am ready, I said. Are you sure? I nodded. Then ask me something, he said. I thought about it, about what I really wanted to know, so I asked the only question that mattered. Are you still grieving her? He looked away for a second, then back. Yes, he said, but I'm also falling for someone else, and I don't think those things cancel each other out. I reached across the table, covered his hand with mine. Then I'll ask one more thing, anything. Stay tonight. He didn't move, didn't flinch. He just said quietly, okay. That night we didn't rush, no fire, no urgency. We just laid beside each other, fully clothed, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy lines on my back, and I felt the most intimate thing I'd felt in years, safe. In my journal I wrote, maybe we all carry more than one truth at a time. Maybe I can miss what I lost, and still be ready for what's next. He didn't ask if I loved him yet. I think he already knows. Chapter 15. The morning after doesn't break anything. I woke up before the light had fully returned. His chest rose and fell beneath my cheek, steady, warm, alive. For a moment, I stayed still, eyes closed, listening to the quiet rhythm of this new chapter breathing beside me. There was no rush of adrenaline, no guilt, no ache in my chest that used to follow mornings like this. There was only peace. Adam didn't stir until I shifted. He opened one eye, then smiled in that way people do when they forget they're allowed to. Morning, he whispered. Hi, I replied. No awkwardness, no questioning, just two people who had risked softness and hadn't shattered. He made coffee. I made toast. We shared it barefoot on the porch, legs tangled, the garden still soaked in early dew. I thought I'd be more scared, I admitted. Of what? This. Waking up next to someone. Feeling okay? He looked at me for a long time, then said, maybe the scar stopped stinging when you stopped pressing on it. We didn't talk about the future. Not yet, but when he kissed my shoulder as he left and said, I'll see you tonight, I didn't wonder if he meant it. I just smiled and said, I'll be here. Later, I took the lavender from the vase and replanted it in the garden. It felt right. Something once cut now rooting again. That afternoon, I found myself humming. Not a song I knew, just something in me that wanted out. And for the first time in months, I didn't write about pain. I wrote this, the morning after doesn't have to undo the night before. Not when it's built on truth. Not when it's gentle. I think I'm not just healing anymore. I think I'm living. Chapter 16. Where the roads might lead. The days that followed were simple. Morning coffee, evening walks, shared glances that lingered longer than necessary. It didn't feel like falling in love. It felt like waking into it, slowly, gently, as if my heart was testing the temperature before stepping fully in. One evening we sat by the beach, our shoes discarded, toes buried in the cool sand. The sun was melting into the horizon, and everything around us felt colored with hush. I've been thinking about staying, Adam said. I turned toward him. Here? He nodded. Not just existing here, but living here. Building something. My heart thudded, slow but firm. With me? I asked, voice soft. With you, he said without hesitation, if you want that. I looked out at the waves, at the sky stitched with pink and quiet promise. I don't know what I want exactly, I admitted, but I know how I feel when I'm with you, and I think maybe that's the compass. He didn't answer with words. He just took my hand, rested it against his chest, and I felt it, the steady, open rhythm of someone who had nothing to hide. We talked more that night, about small things, what color the wood shop would be, what kind of flowers we'd plant next spring, whether we'd ever get a dog. Nothing was certain, but nothing was out of reach anymore either. Later, wrapped in a blanket on the porch, I said, I used to think starting over meant starting fresh, like erasing everything before. Adam shook his head. No, I think starting over just means starting from now, with all of it. The scars, the lessons, the truths. I leaned into him. I think I like now, I whispered. That night in my journal, I wrote, some love stories don't begin with fire. They begin with quiet, with choosing, with staying. And when you stop asking if you're broken, that's when you realize you were always whole, just healing. Chapter 17, The One We Lost, The One We Found. I visited the storage unit for the first time in over a year. It was where I'd put everything after I left the city, boxes I couldn't bear to part with, and others I'd been too numb to unpack. Adam offered to come with me, but I said no, not because I didn't want him there, but because some ghosts needed to be greeted alone. The lock clicked open too easily. The scent of dust and cardboard rose like a memory. I opened the first box. Photos, letters. My old laptop, a coffee mug Ethan once gave me with a stupid inside joke printed on the side. I didn't cry. I just smiled, faintly, gently, like you do when you remember someone you once knew so well and realize they don't live in you anymore. I found the notebook I kept during the first 6 months after the breakup. It was full of rage, sorrow, questions, but somewhere near the end, I found this line, written in my smallest, most fragile handwriting. Please, let this mean something someday. I closed the cover and whispered, it does. When I got home, Adam was building a small bookshelf in my reading nook. He looked up as I came in, eyes narrowing. You okay? I nodded. I let go, I said. For real this time. He set the hammer down and opened his arms. I didn't hesitate. That night, we sat on the floor beside each other, backs to the wall, legs stretched, the scent of sawdust and lavender in the air. I leaned my head on his shoulder. Do you think we would have found each other anyway? I asked. He was quiet for a long time. Then no. I think we had to lose what we did to be ready for what we found. I didn't write in my journal that night. I didn't need to. But if I had, it would have said this. The past didn't break me. It shaped the path that brought me here. To him, to myself, to the life I thought I'd never deserve, but finally believe I do. Chapter 18, Where We Plant Our Roots. It started with a leaky sink. Adam offered to fix it, and I said yes. But somehow, by the end of the week, we were talking about repainting the kitchen, fixing the porch light, maybe even adding a tiny garden shed. Are we nesting? I asked one afternoon, barefoot and covered in paint splatters. He grinned. Feels more like rooting. It didn't feel like we were rushing. It felt like we were settling in, not just into the cottage or the town, into each other, into a rhythm. Morning coffee, late afternoon hammering, evening walks, always with 2 mugs of tea and one quiet conversation. One morning, he brought over a spare drawer, sanded smooth, empty. I thought maybe I could leave some things here, he said. I stared at it. It was small, simple, barely big enough for a toothbrush and a shirt, but it felt enormous. Okay, I said, smiling. I'll clear some space. We never had the conversation about moving in. It just happened. First a drawer, then a jacket on the hook, then his dog-eared books lining the shelf beside mine. It wasn't about ownership. It was about belonging, and it felt like breathing after a long time underwater. One Sunday, I found him in the garden, barefoot in the soil, planting rosemary beside the lavender. I figured we'd need more of this, he said. I smiled, kneeling beside him. You keep planting roots here, I said. You're going to be stuck. His hand found mine in the dirt. Good, he said. That night, I lit a candle and sat on the porch alone for a while. I looked out over the garden at the home that no longer felt temporary, and I realized I hadn't thought about running in weeks, maybe months. I opened my journal. Some love stories don't arrive with fireworks. They arrive slowly, in the sound of another toothbrush clicking into the holder, in the rhythm of shared silence. We're not building a future all at once. We're laying it down, inch by inch, and for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of what grows. Chapter 19, The Word We Almost Said. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special about it. Cloudy, cool, the kind of day where the sea looks steel gray and the wind carries secrets. Adam brought in firewood. I was baking something I couldn't quite get right, cinnamon scones that always came out too dry. We moved through the cottage like we'd always belonged to it, to each other. He walked into the kitchen, wiped flour off my cheek with his thumb. His fingers lingered. Still determined to make these edible? He teased. I laughed. I'm stubborn. You knew this. I did, he said, quieter now. And I like that about you. There was something in his voice I hadn't heard before, something that leaned forward, reached. We sat down on the floor, scones and tea between us, backs against the cabinets. The fire crackled in the other room. I watched him take a bite, eyes half closed like the warmth was settling somewhere deeper than his stomach. He looked at me, like he was about to say it, that word, the one we hadn't said yet, the one I'd written over and over in my journal, but never out loud. His lips parted, and then he swallowed the breath. Instead, he said, "You're the best part of my day." My heart ached, not with sadness, but with the pressure of almost. I smiled gently. You too. And that was enough. Not because we didn't feel it, but because sometimes love isn't ready to be spoken. Sometimes it just rests between two people, waiting to be safe. Later that night, as I lay in bed with his arm draped across me, and the scent of cedarwood on his skin, I didn't wish for more. I just breathed it in. The knowing, the quiet, the everything that didn't need to be said, yet. In my journal I wrote, "There's a moment before love is named where it's at its most sacred. It lives in the glance, in the gesture, in the way you pause when they walk into the room." We didn't say it tonight, but I felt it in the silence. And sometimes that's the bravest way to begin. Chapter 20, What We Whisper in the Dark. It was nearly midnight. The storm had passed hours ago, but the wind still whispered through the trees, tapping softly against the window panes like it had secrets to share. I couldn't sleep. Adam stirred beside me, breath steady, arm loosely around my waist. The warmth of him grounded me, but my thoughts wandered through all the versions of myself I had been before him, and the quiet awe of the woman I was becoming beside him. He shifted. "Can't sleep?" he murmured, voice sandpaper soft. Not really. He pulled me closer. His breath touched the back of my neck. "You thinking?" he asked. A little too much, a pause. "About us?" I nodded, unsure if he could feel it in the dark. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," I admitted. "For something to break, for me to ruin this. You won't. How can you be so sure?" His lips brushed my shoulder. "Because I love you." The world paused, not like a movie moment, not cinematic, just quiet, still, true. My breath caught, not because I was surprised, but because the sound of it, real and out loud, landed like a key in a lock I didn't know I was still holding. I turned to face him. "I love you too," I said. We didn't kiss. We didn't reach for each other. We just lay there, forehead to forehead, hands intertwined under the blanket, breathing together, like that one word had finally unclenched something between us. And in the still dark of a wind-brushed night, I fell asleep in the arms of someone who loved me and knew I was still learning how to hold that, and held me anyway. In my journal the next morning, I wrote, "Love doesn't always need a spotlight. Sometimes it just needs darkness, a hand on your back, and the courage to speak when the world is quiet enough to hear it." He said it first, but I think I'd loved him for a while now. I was just waiting for my heart to believe it. Chapter 21, The Shape of Home. I woke to the sound of seagulls and the smell of coffee. Adam was already in the kitchen, humming, barefoot, wearing the old gray t-shirt I always tried to steal. I watched him for a while from the doorway. There was something about the way he moved in my space, no, our space, that made it feel more real than any key exchange ever could. This wasn't just someone staying over. He'd become part of the walls, the light, the air I breathed. "Morning," he said, without turning around. "You're staring, just making sure you're real." He turned, a smudge of flour on his jaw, and smiled. "Still here." We ate breakfast on the porch. The rosemary had started to bloom again. I rested my feet in his lap, and he traced lazy circles on my ankle as we sipped coffee and read in silence. It struck me how peaceful I felt. Not euphoric, not fireworks, just safe, like I didn't have to keep checking the exits. "I want to paint the back room," I said suddenly. He looked up from his book. "Any reason?" It used to feel like a space I couldn't touch, a leftover part of who I was before, but now I want it to be ours. Maybe a place to write or dream. He nodded. "I'll help." Later that day, we moved furniture, opened windows. The sun poured in like it had been waiting for this invitation. I found old photos in a drawer. The girl I used to be, smiling in cities I no longer missed. I didn't cry. I just whispered thank you and tucked them back away. That evening, Adam stood in the doorway of the freshly painted room, now pale blue and filled with light. "You've changed this place," he said. I looked around. Maybe it changed me. "No," he said gently. "You did that. You let it." That night I wrote, "Home is not a place you find. It's what grows when you stop running and start choosing. This isn't the life I planned. It's better. Because it's mine, and it's quiet, and it's enough. And so am I." Chapter 22, What We Promise in the Quiet. We were lying on the rug in the freshly painted room, the late sun casting golden patterns across the floor. No music, no phones, just the sound of the breeze through the open window and the slow, steady rhythm of his breathing beside mine. Adam turned to face me. "What do you want?" he asked. It wasn't loaded. It wasn't about dinner or next week. It was gentle, curious, and real. I closed my eyes for a moment. "I want to keep choosing this. You, me, this quiet." I opened them. He was watching me the way he always did when I was honest, like my words were the most important thing in the room. "I don't need a ring," I said, "or a party. I just want someone who keeps showing up, even on the ordinary days." "I want that too," he said, "and I'll keep showing up if you let me." We didn't call it a proposal, but it was. Not the kind with fanfare. The kind made of Sunday mornings and paint on your hands and looking at someone and thinking, "Still you." That evening, we sat on the porch and talked about the small things, planting tomatoes, taking a trip in the fall, maybe building a bench under the old tree. We made no vows, only gentle plans, and in them I heard everything I'd ever wanted. Not a promise to stay the same, but a promise to grow together. Later, after dinner, he touched my wrist as we passed in the kitchen. "Do you ever think about what we're building?" "All the time." And I think it's the most honest thing I've ever done. That night, in my journal, I wrote, "Love isn't just about the moment you say I do. It's about all the quiet ways you keep saying it every single day after." We promised each other nothing fancy tonight, just presence, respect, and the willingness to become. That's the kind of forever I believe in. Chapter 23. A season that stays. The leaves began to turn, slowly, then all at once. Gold bled into green. Crimson traced the edges of the trees like fire that didn't burn. I stood at the window one morning, tea in hand, watching the season arrive with a gentleness I hadn't felt in years. It didn't feel like something was ending. It felt like something was beginning. Adam loved autumn. He said the air tasted like wood smoke and memory. We started cooking more. Long stews, warm bread, apple crisps that steamed when we broke into them with spoons. Our evenings were slower now. Blankets on the porch, books traded back and forth. Stories shared not because we needed to be understood, but because we finally felt understood. We went to the farmer's market every Saturday. He'd reach for my hand between booths, always gently, always like a question I'd already answered. Sometimes we didn't buy anything. We just walked, let the colors fall around us, and breathed in this life we'd built, quietly, and very much on purpose. One night I asked him, "Is this it? This quiet? This rhythm?" He paused. "Do you want more?" I thought about it. "No," I said. "I want this season, and the next, and all of them, with you." He smiled, leaned his forehead to mine. "You know what I realized?" he whispered. "What?" "I haven't imagined leaving in months." I closed my eyes and exhaled. Neither have I. That evening I pressed dried leaves into a new notebook. Rust and gold, layered between clean pages I hadn't yet filled. It felt like a promise, not of change but of return, of seasons that wouldn't leave me behind. In my journal I wrote, "For years fall meant loss, cold air, empty beds, words unsaid, but now it means warmth. It means soups and shared socks and arms around me in the dark. This season doesn't feel like a visitor anymore. It feels like home." Chapter 24. The Visitors We Welcome. It started with an email, no subject line, just a familiar name I hadn't read in a very long time, Clara. She had been my closest friend once. We'd gone through college, heartbreaks, dreams, and disasters side by side, until everything fell apart. Not because of one moment, but because when my world collapsed, she hadn't stayed. The message was short. "Hi, Alice. I don't know if this will reach you, or if you even want to hear from me. But I've thought about you every season since we last spoke. I'm sorry I disappeared when you needed me most. I hope you're okay. I hope you found peace. If you ever want to talk, even just once, I'm here." I sat still for a long time, not angry, not sad, just quiet. Adam found me on the porch, phone in hand. "Everything okay?" I handed it to him. Let him read it. He didn't say anything at first. "Then you don't have to reply." "I know, but you can. I know." I waited 2 days, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to answer from who I am now, not from the place where I'd been hurt. My message was simple. "Hi, Clara. Thank you for reaching out. It means more than you know. Life looks very different now. I'm safe. I'm healing. I'm happy. If you'd like to visit sometime, you're welcome here. Not to explain, just to sit, to catch up, or to say hello and goodbye in person. Wishing you peace, either way." She came a week later. The reunion wasn't dramatic. There were no tears, no accusations. We hugged at the gate, made tea, sat in the garden with the smell of rosemary between us. "I didn't know how to stay back then," she said. "I didn't know how to ask you to," I replied. Silence. Then she smiled, sad and soft. "You seem lighter." "I am." When she left, we hugged again. Not the kind of hug that promises to fix everything. The kind that simply says, "We're okay now, even if we weren't before." Later, Adam and I sat under the tree. "You good?" he asked. I nodded. Lighter. He took my hand. "I hope this place never stops giving you that." I smiled, leaned into him. "It won't. You're part of it now." In my journal, I wrote, "Not every visitor brings chaos. Some bring closure, some bring the chance to let go gently. And when you've built peace with your own hands, You don't fear the past anymore. You welcome it, offer it tea, then walk it to the gate. Chapter 25. The Way the Wind Moves Us. We hadn't left the town in months. Not because we couldn't, but because everything we needed had been here. Still, Adam surprised me one morning with a packed bag and a quiet grin. "Weekend trip," he said, "just us." Just because I didn't ask where, I didn't need to. We drove with the windows down, fingers laced on the center console, silence stretching warm between us. He took us up the coast, to a small inn with creaky floors, salt in the air, and an old cat sleeping in the window. The kind of place that made you whisper, even when you didn't have to. That night, we walked the shoreline barefoot. The wind tangled my hair. The sea reached for our toes. Adam stopped and turned to me, brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. "You're glowing," he said. "No makeup," I teased. "No," he smiled. "Peace." We didn't talk about home, or the future, or anything heavy. We just moved through the day as if it were enough, because it was. The next morning, I woke to the sound of waves and the scent of coffee. He'd brought it in from the little shop on the corner. Still hot, creamed just the way I liked it. He sat beside me on the bed, handed me the cup, and kissed my knee. "This is nice," I said. "This is us," he replied. Later, on the way back home, I watched the hills roll by through the passenger window. And I realized something. I didn't feel like I was returning to something fragile. I felt steady, rooted, full. Not because of where we were going, but because of who I had become. That night I wrote, "There was a time when leaving meant fear, that the moment I stepped away it would all fall apart. But now I know love that's real doesn't unravel when you move. It follows. It waits. It grows. And so do I." Chapter 26. The Life I No Longer Fear. It happened on a Tuesday. I was standing in the garden, pruning back the lavender and thinking about spring, about raised beds, maybe even tomatoes this year. It hit me, gently, like a truth that had always been waiting. I wasn't afraid anymore, not of staying, not of being seen, not of joy. For most of my life, joy had felt temporary, something I could borrow but never keep. It had always been followed by loss, or shame, or silence. But now it felt like soil, like something I could plant things in. I walked back into the house and found Adam building shelves in the back room. He was whistling, something tuneless and familiar. He looked up when I entered. "You're smiling," he said. "I just realized something." "What's that?" "I'm not afraid to belong here." He put down the drill, came over, wrapped his arms around me. "You always have," he whispered. "You just needed time to believe it." We went out to dinner that night. Nothing fancy, just the place down the street with too many fairy lights and the world's best bread. And halfway through the meal, I looked at him and said, "Let's stay." He blinked. "Here, in this house, in this town, in this life. For real." His smile broke slow and wide, like dawn. "I was just waiting for you to say it." We signed the lease extension the next morning, tacked it to the fridge like a postcard from the future. No fanfare, no grand gestures, just a small, quiet act of commitment to the place, to each other, to the life we'd chosen. That evening I wrote, "This life isn't perfect. The roof still leaks sometimes. The past still echoes on rainy nights. But it's mine, and I'm not standing at the door anymore, waiting to run. I live here, fully, deeply, without fear. And somehow that is everything." Chapter 27. The Little Things That Last. Every morning, Adam makes 2 cups of coffee. One for him, one for me. Always the same mugs. Always the same quiet moment before the day begins. He doesn't ask if I want it. He just knows I do. And somehow, that feels more romantic than any bouquet ever did. We don't talk about forever anymore. Not because we don't believe in it, but because we've started living it in our routines, our laughter over poorly folded laundry, the way he warms my side of the bed when I'm running late from work. There's a hook by the door now for his keys, and a row of 3 plants on the kitchen windowsill I used to kill every year, but now somehow keep alive. We built a spice rack together on a rainy Sunday. We argue about music sometimes. We apologize when we're short. We always come back. One night, I caught him folding my sweater with more care than he gave his own. "Why do you do that?" I asked. He smiled. "Because it matters to you." And I realized that's love. Not the grand gesture, not the movie scene, just someone paying attention, choosing you in the smallest, quietest ways. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Love is the light left on when you work late. It's the extra blanket folded at the foot of the bed before a cold night. It's not loud. It's not constant fireworks. It's steady, gentle, repeated. It's what lasts when everything else changes." Chapter 28, What We Call Home Now. We decided to host a dinner, just a few friends, nothing elaborate. I made soup, the kind that simmers all day and tastes better than it should. Adam baked bread, even though he always claimed he wasn't a baker. The house still smelled like rosemary and flour hours later. We moved the little dining table closer to the window, lit candles, folded napkins. It wasn't perfect, it was ours. The guests arrived slowly. Voices filled the hallway. Laughter spilled from the kitchen. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Flushed cheeks, messy bun, cardigan falling off one shoulder. And I smiled. Because I looked exactly like someone who belonged here. Someone brought wine. Someone else brought a pie that collapsed gloriously on the counter. We passed plates, poured drinks, told stories. Some new, some old, some Adam had heard 100 times and still laughed at anyway. At one point, I caught myself watching the room instead of speaking, watching him. Adam was leaning against the doorway, laughing with Clara, his sleeves pushed up, his eyes soft. He looked so at home, and then I realized, so did I. After everyone left, we stood in the quiet kitchen surrounded by half-washed dishes and crumbs. "I like them," he said, placing a glass in the sink. "Me too. I like us more." I smiled. "Me too." Later I wrote, "I used to think home was a place, an address, a clean slate, a perfect setup. But home is this, a messy kitchen, an overfilled pie, a table that seats more laughter than it should, and a man beside me who never stops choosing me back." Chapter 29, The Winter We Didn't Break. Winter came slowly. There was no grand arrival, no storm to mark its beginning, just colder mornings, bare branches, a quiet that settled deeper than before. We lit fires earlier now, wore thicker socks, made soup more often than not, and yet nothing felt cold between us, but I felt it, a soft hum beneath my ribs, not fear, not doubt, just that strange ache that comes when everything is, for once, okay, when you're so used to pain that peace feels unnatural. One morning, Adam noticed me staring out the window longer than usual. "You've been quiet lately," he said. "Just thinking." He came behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, rested his chin on my shoulder. "Is everything all right?" I leaned back into him. "Yes." "That's what's strange." I told him later, curled on the couch beneath the knitted blanket he insisted was hideous but warm. "I'm not scared something will go wrong. I'm scared that this is real, and I'll never believe I deserve it." He didn't rush in to fix it, didn't tell me I was being silly. He just took my hand. "You don't have to deserve love," he said. "You just have to let it stay." We didn't make resolutions that winter. We made cinnamon toast, read books to each other by firelight, painted the hallway a softer shade of blue. We watched the sea turn gray and still, held each other through the darkness at 4 p.m., and little by little I stopped bracing. One night I woke to snow falling, silent, heavy, perfect. I stood at the window, watching it blanket the world in softness. Adam stirred behind me. "You okay?" "I think I'm finally not waiting for it all to disappear." He smiled, eyes still closed. "That's the beginning of forever." In my journal that night, I wrote, "Peace used to feel like a lie I hadn't earned. Now it feels like a room I've slowly furnished with trust. This winter, I didn't fall apart. I didn't run. I stayed. And we didn't break. We built. Chapter 30. The morning I didn't look back. The letter came in January. Handwritten, no return address. But I knew the handwriting the moment I saw it. It was from him. Not an apology. Not exactly. More of a quiet attempt at closure. A few words about the past. A mention of a house being sold. And a line that caught me. You always seem to belong somewhere I couldn't follow. He wasn't wrong. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just sat with it. This strange final echo of a life that felt like someone else's now. Adam found me folding the letter later that night. Do you want to talk about it? Not really, I said, but I think I want to see it one last time. The house? I nodded. Not because I missed it, but because I needed to know I could stand on that street and feel nothing but stillness. We drove the next morning. No rush, no drama, just frost on the windows and soft music playing between us. When we arrived, I didn't get out right away. I just looked at the windows, the front door I used to unlock every day, the garden I once pretended to love, and I felt nothing painful, just space, the kind that comes when you finally let something go. I got out, walked up the steps, put my hand on the old door frame, and then I turned around. Adam was waiting at the car, not moving, not pushing. I walked back down, smiling, light, free. That's it? He asked gently. That's all it ever needed to be. We drove home with the windows down. I let the wind take whatever was still clinging to me. I didn't ask Adam to talk. I didn't need him to understand every piece of it. He just held my hand on the drive back. And I knew that chapter was closed, and I didn't need it anymore. That night I wrote, the past didn't ask to be erased. It just needed to be acknowledged and then released. I went back to say goodbye. But what I really said was, I've already begun. And for the first time in years, I didn't look back. Chapter 31. The door we leave open. Spring came with soft defiance, like it had been waiting patiently beneath the frost for its turn to bloom again. The rosemary in our garden returned without asking. So did the lavender. So did I. Adam started leaving the bedroom door open in the mornings. At first, I thought it was just habit, letting the air in, chasing out the heat. But one day I asked, why the door? He looked up from his book. Because I don't want you to ever feel like you have to knock. We never talked about rings, or guest lists, or any of the loud traditions we were both too quiet for. But in the way we moved, the shared toothbrush drawer, the laundry folded just the way the other liked, the morning silence we protected. We'd already said yes. One evening, I came home to find him building something in the backyard. What is that? I asked, grinning. Our table. He looked sheepish. I thought, maybe this summer we eat outside, invite people, maybe even just keep filling this life we've made. And I felt it, this swelling in my chest, not panic, not longing, but readiness, to be seen, to be chosen out loud. Not because I needed saving, but because I'd already saved myself. That night, over wine and a sky so pink it looked imagined, he looked at me and said, we don't have to do anything official. I know, I whispered. But if one day you want to stand in front of a few people and tell them what this is, I'd be honored to call it what it's always been. What's that? Home. In my journal, I wrote, not all doors are meant to be closed. Some stay open for a reason, so we can walk through without fear, so we can return without knocking. This love doesn't ask me to prove myself. It just makes room. And in that space, I finally became. Chapter 32, Something Like Vows. We didn't send invitations. There were no white dresses, no rehearsals, no cake tastings or speeches. Just a Wednesday in May, warm still and completely ours. Adam woke early, made coffee, and brought it back to bed. He kissed my shoulder, then sat beside me quietly. We don't have to call it anything, he said, but I'd like to promise you something today. I looked at him over the rim of my cup. I'd like that too. We went down to the shore where the cliffs met the sea. The sun was low and kind. A breeze stirred the air, not enough to steal our words, just enough to remind us we were alive. He pulled out 2 folded pieces of paper from his back pocket. I laughed. You wrote yours down? He shrugged. I didn't want to forget. His hands were shaking as he opened the page. Not from nerves, but from meaning. Alice, he read, I've loved you in the silence, in the mess, in the moments no one else saw. I promise not to hold you still, but to walk beside you as you grow, even when it scares me. I promise to be your warmth when the days get cold, your softness when the world is hard, and your mirror when you forget how far you've come. He looked up, and I promised to stay, not because I must, but because every part of me wants to. I didn't cry, not until it was my turn. I didn't have paper, but I had everything I needed. Adam, I said, you found me when I didn't know I was still here. I promised not to disappear again. Not into old stories, not into fear. I promised to choose this life, even when it's quiet, to reach for your hand even when it's easier not to. I promised to let you see all of me, not just the strong parts, but the tender, breakable pieces too. And I promised to come home, not just to our house, but to you, every single day. We didn't kiss like it was a first. We kissed like it was a decision, like 2 people who had learned what it meant to stay. That evening, I wrote, some vows aren't spoken before crowds and are whispered under trees. Some promises aren't signed in ink. They're written in the way he folds your sweater, the way you hold his name in your chest. This wasn't a wedding. It was a remembering of who we became and who we still want to be. And that, to me, is everything. Chapter 33, The Ordinary Days That Follow. There were no fireworks after our promises, no sudden changes, no new last names or certificates to hang on a wall, just a quiet morning. 2 toothbrushes side by side, 2 coffee mugs steaming gently by the window, and that was more than enough. We didn't chase grand gestures. We folded laundry. We argued over grocery lists. We kissed between chopping vegetables. The world kept spinning as if nothing had happened, but inside our little life, everything had. I watched Adam fix the leaky sink one Saturday, half cursing, half laughing, and it struck me this is what staying looks like. It's not always poetry. Sometimes it's just turning the tap off twice and hoping it holds. Some nights we sat in silence, reading, drinking tea, listening to the rain. Other nights we danced in the kitchen barefoot, letting old songs carry us back and forward all at once. The love didn't feel louder. It felt truer. Not something we had to prove, just something we tended, like a fire that didn't need to rage, only to stay lit. One morning I found a note in the fruit bowl. Bananas are too soft. You're not. I love you more today than yesterday. And I liked you an awful lot yesterday. I folded it into my journal, smiled to myself, and poured 2 cups of coffee. That night I wrote, forever doesn't happen all at once. It happens in dishes done without asking, in the way he memorizes how much honey you take in your tea. It's not the promise you made. It's how you live it when no one is watching. And in that ordinariness, you find the kind of magic that stays. Chapter 34, The Quiet Goodbye. It arrived in early spring, no name on the envelope, just my address in soft, careful handwriting. I knew before I opened it, not because of the name inside, but because of the feeling in my chest, like an old wound whispering, I'm ready now. It was from Laura, my sister-in-law, or rather, my former one. We hadn't spoken since the divorce, not out of anger, but out of absence. Some losses come with silence so deep, it swallows even the people who stayed on the edges. The letter was short. Dear Alice, I don't know where we went wrong. I guess none of us really knew how to hold on to each other after everything fell apart. I just wanted to say that I always admired you, your grace, your strength. Even when we didn't speak, I followed your story in the quiet ways people do. through whispers, old photos, things left behind. I'm glad you're happy. You deserve to be. Thank you for everything you were to our family and everything you've become since. With warmth, Laura. I read it twice, then tucked it between the pages of an old journal I hadn't opened in years. I didn't cry. I didn't ache. I just sat very still, letting the grace of it settle into my bones. That night, I lit a candle on the kitchen table. Adam came in, saw the flame, and tilted his head. Everything all right? Yes, I said, just saying goodbye. He didn't ask to whom. He didn't need to. After dinner, we walked along the shore. The tide was low, the wind soft. We didn't talk much. But when he took my hand, I held it tighter than usual. Not out of fear, but out of presence. Because nothing was pulling me backward anymore, not even memory. Later I wrote, not every goodbye needs to echo. Some are meant to be soft, unloud, unheavy. They come in the form of letters, or sighs, or just the quiet knowing that you finally let go. And when they arrive, you don't fight them. You open the window, let them breathe. Then you turn back toward the life you've chosen. The one still unfolding, the one that's waiting. Chapter 35, Where the Light Finds Me Now. The house is quiet this morning, the kind of quiet that doesn't ask to be filled. It simply rests. Adam is still sleeping. The kettle hums on the stove. The sun climbs in slow gold ribbons across the floor, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table, writing, not to heal anymore, but to remember. There was a time I thought survival was the best I could hope for, that if I could just make it through, I would have done enough. But that was before I knew what it meant to belong to myself, before I knew that the kind of love I needed didn't come with conditions, that it could be found in quiet men who built things with their hands and didn't try to fix you, only hold space while you fixed yourself. The garden outside is blooming again. The rosemary survived the frost. So did I. Adam stirs as I write. I hear his feet on the stairs. He walks in half asleep, kisses my cheek without a word, and pours himself a cup of coffee. Just like every morning, just like every beginning, I look up at him and smile. Still here, I tease. He grins. Where else would I be? And for the first time, maybe in my whole life, I don't feel like I have to prove anything to anyone, not even to myself. I don't need to earn the peace I've built. I don't need to apologize for being happy. I close my journal. Not forever, just for now. Because there is no more searching to do. No more running. No more waiting. The sun hits the side of my face, and I whisper, more to myself than to him, this is where the light finds me now.